Right. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending the SEMA Collision Refinishing stage, and welcome to SEMA 2025. I'm TJ O'Rourke, one of the subject matter experts at iCar, and I'm lucky enough to be joined today with
John Shoebridge with Snap-on, Car Liner, and also Blackhawk. So I do the undercar and the collision training specialist. And to my right, I have
Chuck Searles, training manager for Snap-on Equipment and Total Shop Solutions.
AKA the guy that keeps me straight. So he's got a full-time job there. So, but today what we want to do, we want to talk about the blueprint process, and kind of a subject that's almost getting worn out, but we want to make everybody aware of some new tools that you can throw into the process to recognize more things to deliver that safer repair when we're making our repair plans, and the tools that make that possible.
the the blueprinting process. More important than ever, and it's good to know that there's companies out there that are developing tools and equipment that are going to be more beneficial to the technicians and to the shops than in the past to make it easier for them. So why don't you talk a little bit more about that, please?
Yeah, so as a technician, I like to tear a lot of things down, even back, 45 years ago when I first started to get into this. And having an organized tear down was very important back then, but it's more important now. We need the information to do one of two things: either find out if this car is truly a total loss or if we're going to fix the car. And I think what's happening more and more all the time, because I actually have been looking, in my local town of Conway, Arkansas, we have a Copart, we have an LKQ, and we also have a Mannheim. And I walk the lots and I see a lot of these cars that are total lossing, and I'm thinking, gee, maybe if somebody just tore this car down a little bit more, instead of deeming it a total loss, it could have been saved as a fixer. And right now we're kind of running out of work and opportunities as claim counts are down, and the total losses are rising. I mean, I'm not one for advocating fixing an unsafe car. I think we would all agree with that. But seeing the things that I see out there, I scratch my head and wonder, why did that Chevy truck get totaled? It certainly didn't look like a total loss in what I would compare things to, even in today's market. But it's the blueprint process, I think, would net us a lot more work and save a lot of these cars from going to an early grave. And of course, that's going to do everything from reducing carbon footprint all the way up to helping our business out at a time that it needs. So, but talking about this blueprint process, who needs it and why? I mean, that's basically the way that I went at this presentation. So we had control now.
Next slide, please.
So we have these different shops out there. In equipment sales, you kind of try to pigeonhole, recognize where your opportunities are. So we have, of course, direct repair facilities that are spelled out on a contract. And a lot of these contracts have specific equipment called out, such as three-dimensional measuring, such as welders that meets the original equipment manufacturer's guidelines and recommendations and things like that. And of course, you have your OEM certified shops. They need to do a blueprint process to recognize things such as repair versus replace and the extent of damage that's there. Saw a really good example of this a couple of weeks ago in California, where a carbon fiber panel was damaged that covered a Uniside. The carbon fiber was mauled pretty bad, but when they got the carbon fiber panel off, the Uniside was basically untouched. So, a little bit further of a tear down there, this car was being repaired in a facility from an OEM manufacturer. So again, a little bit more of a tear down. There's one job there that could have saved it. And of course, we got our special shops. They're going to need to deal with the structure. A lot of these cars in special shops are modified in one way, shape, or form or another. And again, you need to do a lot of comparative and absolute measuring to get side-to-side comparisons on things that don't even have specifications. So those are kind of the three different avenues that we can take with the different shops, but they're all going to lead to the same result. They still need to tear down to bring up the extent of damage, right? Next slide. Okay, so the other thing that's paramount in the shop is cycle time. You know, we want to eliminate all the time bandits as much as we can, and these are all things that we can do to get into the step. Now, of course, some of the folks that work with us on blueprint process, they'll call out 30 or 40 different things. The more detail you give in a blueprint, the better results you're going to achieve. But we need to do, of course, the pre-scan, post-scan. That's no new news there. A lot of folks, of course, are recommending the OEM scan tools, and again, if you've got further diagnostic equipment, it should marry up to an OEM scan tool as well, or have a way to get there to do that, which we have several different avenues for that. The other thing that's really important during the blueprint process that a lot of folks are overlooking, you need to pull the actual documentation from the original equipment manufacturer on how this process needs to go down. I mean, there are repair versus replace considerations that need to be looked up. As you know, a lot of especially inside structures, a lot of this stuff cannot be repaired. So in cases like that, you know, you're probably going to have a total loss vehicle with its hitting the side, but you still have to reveal all the damages and go through with it. Another thing that we really try to stress, and just about every original equipment manufacturer out there stresses, is true three-dimensional measuring, meaning length, height, and width. And again, when you're looking at some of the measuring equipment that's out there, we offer up some pretty good, and there's a lot of other good solutions out here on the floor for point-to-point measuring. And point-to-point measuring is great for recognizing damage, but it's not a good repair plan during the repair process. We want to make sure that we're going three-dimensionally instead of point-to-point, which is just one dimension. Also, we encourage a full-blown four-wheel alignment, measuring your diagnostic angles. Of course, our ultimate goals are to get the camber, caster, toe in the front, the camber, and the toe in the rear, but you should be, in a proper blueprint, measuring the steering axis inclination and your included angle, and that's going to get any kind of camber issues you have and reveal it. So if you know how to work the diagnostic angles, it actually cuts the parts in half. For example, your steering axis inclination is measuring structure or pieces that are holding pivot points. Your included angle is measuring everything between the pivot points, such as your knuckle and so forth. Toe out on turns needs to be measured to get your steering arm and your inner tie rod. And then you're going to do a max steer to check out the health of the steering gear system, meaning the rack and pinion or steering gearbox. Within a matter of minutes, I can get a full picture of my complete steering and suspension system just running these diagnostic angles. We also have training available. Now that everybody's slow, it's a good time to train. We encourage that, but we have classes and curriculum to teach how to actually do a proper collision diagnostic alignment. We have some really good instructors out there in the different market areas.
And it is great to know that if they make the investment, the repair facilities make these investments, to know how to use it is only going to benefit them in the long run.
Well, this one here alone, it prevents what I call the Friday follies. We're all familiar with that, right? When do you need to find out about a bent control arm? Hopefully on Monday when that car rolls through, I've done the blueprint process and a steering axis inclination was low, so I know I needed a lower control arm. And then there's other ways of measuring it too with different vendor software out here and so forth. But most control arms, especially the ones that contain minor damage, really aren't picked up until it goes to the alignment rack, and that's, what, 3 o'clock on Friday when the car has to be delivered at 5, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And that's why I call it the Friday Follies. So I've never experienced that in my career at all, but it's a big time saver because, you know, your alignments and things like your AC work and things like, we put it off to the end, and that could be the thing that just train wrecks the whole cycle time and gives you bottlenecks. Another thing we really feel, identify all those ADAS systems. A lot of this stuff can't be identified simply by doing a visual or looking at, I hate it, I'm going to call them idiot lights, to see what systems the car actually has. You should really run a complete scan and let the scan tool identify the modules and let you know not only what system you have, but what type of system you have. As many of you know, I used to be a Volkswagen instructor, and there was one year on the A7 Volkswagen platform that they put 3 different radars on that car that function in 3 different ways. One of them just slowed the car down, the other one stopped it. And then there was another system that was a stop and go system. So by hooking up the scan tool and running it, you know exactly what system you have and what ADAS systems that you're going to have to look up to see if they need a relearn, calibration, and of course we're going to inspect these parts a little differently than we would other parts such as headlights and grills and things like that. You really have to give this thing a good glance over during the blueprint process to catch all of that. And then last but not least, you know, check all the fluids, refrigerant level especially. I don't have to tell anybody that the refrigerants have gone psycho expensive. And again, our good friends at the insurance company, they may need the little receipt to know exactly how much refrigerant we put in the systems and so on and so forth there. Not to mention it's good documentation that shows that the system was successful and should be able to function without problems going down the road. So
You could even take it one step further, and you could even go with wheel and tire diagnostics too.
Yes.
Because you can look at $20,000 worth of rims and tires. It may not even look damaged. So there's plenty of diagnostic equipment out there that can take care of that too.
yeah, the other thing on that, thanks for bringing that up, Chuck, because there's a lot of these what we call diagnostic balancers. They will actually give you measurements on a wheel. And some manufacturers out there have position statements that say if there's more than 60 thousandths damage or even 32 thousandths damage or anything more than your fingernail getting into the wheel, that it's non-replaceable. But if I have a measurement from the wheel and a measurement from the tire that proves the tire has a flat spot in it and the wheel is damaged, you know, 250 thousandths, that's a quarter of an inch, that would not be a good candidate for repair. If a position statement says, hey, you can only pull out 30 thousandths, that's all you can do. And, you know, I believe that we're finally waking up to position statements and following them, but, you know, that's an area there. But, right, the diagnostic balancer, I think, is a very critical piece. And there are several manufacturers out there that have their different versions of that, so look carefully at them. Next slide. Okay, so the benefits of blueprinting, though, you get all the damages up front. We offer, as I mentioned before, a couple of different versions of software. They measure the cars differently. Again, our 2X1 and PointX, we want to market that exclusively for measuring blueprinting, not for repair, because the 2X1 only does underbody, it does not do upper body, okay? The 2X2 does upper body, and the 2X3 brings on a couple more pieces of measuring. For example, there's a suspension program in there. If you tell the computer where the area of damage is, it'll do some comparative measurements, both front and rear, and will try to call out the parts that are damaged that way, okay? And again, that's upper body capabilities there. And you can even measure the surface of a dent. There's a program in there called Surface where I can actually measure the length of the dent, the height of the dent, and the depth of the dent. So that eliminates what's going on now. You send a picture of your vehicle into whoever's paying for this, and they try to judge the dent over the phone looking at a picture taken by a phone. Whereas with this, you get actual documentation to tell us exactly what the dent is. So there's a lot of differences and a lot of really neat whistles and bells, not only in our software, but in everybody's out here on the floor. Okay, so really get into, if you're purchasing here, especially at a show like this, try to think midterm and long term. What I see out there, a lot of folks buy new equipment like what we're trying to expose you to, but they buy it on impulse or emotion or immediate need. You know, I hear it down there all the time. I need a frame machine. What's your lowest price point? Okay. Well, if we would think this through a little bit, what are you doing now? Would you like to pick up an OE in the future? What are the OE's concerns, and what equipment are they going to make you buy? You know, a lot of us vendors out here, we know programs, and as soon as you mention a certain specific program, we can help guide you to get you into that program to make your facilities a little more profitable and to make your lives a little more enjoyable at the shop level. And like I said, if you made an impulse buy, man, you could have just pigeonholed yourself into buying unnecessary equipment or equipment that's just not going to do the job.
And you're stuck with it.
Married, yes. Unless you've got a forgiving distributor that will give you an awesome trade-in, which happens.
And I know you have a later slide that kind of compares some of your systems, and we are getting a little short on time, so
Yeah.
we do want to move forward so we don't have to miss out on that.
Okay, justifying total losses. This is something that kind of a hot topic. So in the past, you know, I'm showing my age here when I show you a lot of this stuff, but in the past we didn't handle as many total losses as what we used to. So this process has been a growing process. And in the past, you know, you would take a car, if you didn't tear the car down near enough, we ended up actually fixing cars that went above threshold. So we're fixing totals. Doesn't happen as much nowadays because of this new process. You can flip the slide. But we're also having a high level of cars totaled. Now, this is where I did a lot of research work here to figure out what was going on. Of course, the salvage values are very high. A lot of the salvage is sold out of country. It's just, that's a circle out of control right now, and you know, we do what we can to bring things back in. Availability of parts, as you know, everybody seems to be using COVID as an excuse still. I don't know how much longer that's going to go on. Length of repair time and high rental bills, that's always been an issue. Constructive total losses due to sensitive materials and sensitive structures, and again, some of this stuff can't even be welded on anymore. The technician shortage, I really enjoyed the gentleman's presentations before we got up here. And then, of course, technician ability and training and attitude. That's something we're working on here at Snap-on to try to bring fresher technicians in to use the fresher technologies and so on and so forth. So the new products that we have up there, and close this and wrap this thing up, we have a new product up there. It's not really a new product, but a new way of looking at it. It's called the Speed Rack. We have 4 new wheel extent stands, and it gives the technician or an estimator the ability to literally set on one of the mechanical roll-around stools, do a 3-dimensional measuring instead of just a point-to-point. Or if you want to, you can use a Pointex underneath it to get the point-to-point. So it's very kind of lightweight, portable equipment. You just simply drive the cars right up over top of it, and it comes in many different variations. You can even put it in the ground if you want to. So, other than that, anybody have any questions on anything?
I don't see any, but I do encourage people to stop down by your booth and see some of these things that you talked about, because I do think that with the investment, the technicians are going to use these to reduce bottlenecks in their process flow. You know, we don't need something that you start on that you find out is a total loss down the road. So
Yeah,
I do appreciate your time, both of you, for coming up on stage. And everyone, please go see Car-O-Liner down at their booth.
Yep,
Thank
we're
you.
at South Hall Upper at the entrance. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, TJ.